Hi, I'm Tyler Mills, and I'm here to read for the Bad Mouth reading series. Thank you so much to Rebecca Aronson for having me. I'm I love the series and had the opportunity to read in person in Albuquerque a few years ago, and so it's such a joy to be back. I'm reading on a rainy evening in Brooklyn, and I'm going to be sharing poems from Cities Scattered, which is my new chapbook from Tupelo Press. And it's innovative formally as a book and within its own individual poems. And so the book itself takes the form of a cabaret with four voices that speak throughout the book. And two of those voices engage with and borrow glimmers of language from Siegfried Krakauer's Salaried Masses, which was a study of wage laborers or white collar workers in Weimar Berlin between the wars. And Krakauer was an ethnographer who studied the laborers at this time and was concerned about the market. And notably for me, he included the voices of the women who were caught within this really challenging network, and they were demonized by right-wing political forces, but they could still afford to buy bread at the end of the day when hyperinflation was causing cash to lose value so quickly that if you were in line to buy something, you might not be able to afford the thing you were buying when you got to the front of the line. So I was really interested in that perspective and the kind of character or voice that would emerge from that research. Oh, there was some lightning out my window. And I was also interested in his study, and I was interested in that time period and in performance and what the lyric voice can do. And so you'll hear an I, self, woman in Berlin voice, um, and you'll hear a voice of a chorus and a voice of a study, both of which borrow from Krakauer's text. And then there's a contemporary interlocutor who has a voice close to my own, who comments on the past from the perspective of the present, with the knowledge of the Holocaust and the war. And it's important to note that Krakauer he fled Germany because he was going to be persecuted for his Jewish faith. And so he first went to Paris and then ended up in New York City and spent the rest of his days there. This book took its inspiration from an exhibit I saw at the Neue Gallery in New York, their Berlin Metropolis exhibit in 2016. And so the book emerged then in the context of, the rise of Trump and all of those things. And so that's what the framework is for this chapbook. So thank you so much for listening. I, self, woman in Berlin, 1930. I wake, put on a silk slip, a wool skirt, and cut past the building, bombed to rubble in the war. Ruin sculpts the air, moth-holed, like the medieval castle I played in as a girl. The treasury prints more paper. My purse thickens. I sit at a table and type, and last night's gin tastes like mulberries on my tongue. My pulse at my temple flickers like a copper butterfly, and the moist morning feels like another mouth, her lips startling the back of my neck. Chorus played on a Victrola. Every postcard carries its outgoing stamp. One of my friends is pregnant. They deny it. The men, the boys, deny. What floats on the surface of this? I begin singing in a passable voice, breaking out of my cage. The question is whether the image catches reality, something creative. We come to the city in search of adventure and roam like comets with our small incomes. I run away in my beret with a little point on top. After closing time, at home in my furnished room, I gulp down strong coffee then, off and away. The study, tiny catastrophes of everyday existence. I acquired insight in front of a long raised table where 3 judges reached their decision at once, like meteorologists studying the weather. Thanks to the question and answer game, a notebook comes to light, a few heretical jottings, like victims washed ashore. We must rid ourselves the delusion major events determine a person, private feelings, the inner architecture of bourgeois ruin. A woman buys shoes in a large store. She recounted to me her involuntary wanderings. I, Self, Woman in Berlin, 1930. Lines and lines of men in trench coats, ripped at the shoulder, splattered with mud at the hem, lean against the walls, waiting for unemployment to open, with marks in their pockets, losing value as the shadows shift. I punch my time at the office, count each month's days of blood, fight the manager, sliding his fingers in, and he says, "Do I like going up, up, up?" Gags me. And the wives of these men look straight out into the street as though the wind would create a new morning. And I throw myself into the current, not lucky, not lucky. Chorus played on a Victrola, arousal. I tried to learn magical properties to open the gates. Nice, friendly, like an actress who portrays elegant villains. How shall I become beautiful in a suit, morally crystallized from the former inchoate human mass? Interlocutor, what the study ignores. The study ignores coal staining the sheets like ink as they hang out the window, twisting in the wind down the brick wall. Bitters swirl into a goblet in the club where office workers dance after filing paper all day while their personalities waited outside like bicycles. This study ignores the bubble that formed around them all like the shell of a golden egg. And how can one do an ethnography when the word wraps like string around the tissue of the intestine and the guts of the country? I've stepped on gold memorial stones in the street where mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles and daughters and sons and cousins. I, Self, Women in Berlin, 1930. If you ask me later if I knew, the city scattered its sequins like starlight over the floors of the clubs, if the city swallowed death like the crescent of a melon, if the city coughed out coal powder in the swirling eddies of the sky, the sunset like ostrich feathers framing the face of a movie star, I would say no, no. But if you ask me if I negotiated my wages so my fingertips would not touch the trolley floor when I dropped my glove, and saw the stretched tongues of the shoes, chewed and stained and gapped at the heel, so I could buy a hot cross bun at lunch as though the marks shot up, though the crust shone like a new coin and could not be touched by the woman with my face who waited until the line brought her to the front, and the dough smelled like salt water and milk, and her hands warmed the paper worth the same as the dream she whispered into the hair of her daughter as she woke her in the lapis lazuli light the night pulled into the room. What would you want me to say? I starched my blouse and practiced the answers to all the questions and ribboned my curls, and yes, I bought the knot of bread. Her eyes tracked the curve of the curb where pigeons gathered, and I broke off pieces at my desk while the sky swallowed everything whole. chorus played on a Victrola. The tormentor compels the victim. I was dismissed without notice, lost in the skies of capital, no longer touched by life down below. Could I wear a schoolmaster's beard? Do I bow down to those above? Am I a cyclist? Am I in a labyrinth? I receive instructions and pass them on, lost in the dark like the writer of this sentence. I, self, woman in Berlin, 1930. Lindens rain gold moons all over my shoes when I break my left heel in the grate above a drain. We'll wallpaper the nursery with money. I overheard someone laugh in the hall. One of the other girls, the company picnic, the dance, the tennis match, this weekend and next weekend, the season warm and windy. In the park, children fly kites with crossed pencils as bones and wings of paper money. The sun stencils the numbers. I think of cross-stitch holes and of my mother. I think of autumn and how I will be paid again late this afternoon. I'm going to read one of the cabaret poems in the book. I, self, woman in Berlin, 1930. A spotlight blackens the brick wall, an aura. The lit up bricks somehow personal, nipples and areolas. I am a clown with opium eyes. Guess if I am real. I mean, I am part of three acrobats, a geometry of bodies, a triangle. Now my mouth shares a string with another mouth. My eyes punched in with absinthe, dust brushed on, bangs and side part shaved, unshaved, arms raised. I am part of a line of legs and skirts kicking up, spotlight, shadow palms the wall, empties it like an eye. Interlocutor, historical. How can I not talk about what it all means? My mouth a sewage grate that takes it all in. Ethnographer, I've caught your voices of workers tricked into debt, into waves of it that shuffle like paper lightly on a desk, and my mind imprints with death camps, bones, ashes of my love's relatives. What can I say? What can I do? Think of a mother's hands pressed on warm cheeks, a family stolen from time. Am I the eye of a future, the eye who wants to return as a warning? How can I be? How can I? What flew around the shoulders of the workers into the stones and the buildings and flies continues to jet through the windows and erupts. I. Coda, more than any film. Oh, weekend. 100 reports of a factory do not add to its reality. Can the city be reproduced? Photographs of 100 views, the mosaic of single observations. I perform mechanical tasks, interchangeable, private, but I am no less a person. Thank you. Thank you for listening. And thank you for having me.